Hey, what's going on, everyone? Today we're going to go over every single encounter and give you like a quick tip for each and every one of them. There are over 100 encounters. I think there are 107. And this is the new mechanic for set 11. And I want to show you guys a couple of tips and tricks to kind of run through all of these so you know what to do whenever you get each and every encounter. Because it's going to be really important to step up your gameplay if you're trying to climb optimally. Essentially, the way this works is you get an encounter 2 to 5 times every single game, and it all happens randomly, so you don't know when it's going to happen. And typically, they either give you a choice like Aatrox, or they just give you a buff like Ahri's Kiss over here. So they show up based on the stage over here, and then during certain rounds. So Amumu, for example, his second encounter can show up during stage 3 and 4 in rounds 5, 6, and 7. So let's just get right into this, starting with Aatrox. Aatrox offers you a component anvil, player health, or gold. So obviously, if you're low health, you want to get health. If you're poor, you want to get gold. And if you have a bunch of item components on your bench, then obviously you get the component anvil. However, this also changes based on the stage of the game. So in the beginning of the game, health is pretty useless, so if you get this in stage 2, probably would skip it. Something like gold, on the other hand, very, very important, because gold is more valuable earlier in the game than it is later. If you're trying to win streak, go for the components, but how does this change towards the late game? Well, the kind of opposite effect happens. So stage 3, I would say they're all pretty equal. It depends what you want. If you lost streak the entirety of stage 2, I would go with the health. If you're trying to win streak in stage 3, go with the component anvil. And then if you're a bit poor, obviously get the gold. But in stage 4, you probably don't want the gold as much. You definitely want to get either the health or the component anvil. The reason why is because at that point in the game, gold does not matter as much. You really just want as much player strength as possible. And health kind of also gives you gold too. So even if you wanted gold, health is a bit better. Next up we have is Ahri. Ahri's Kiss grants increased player health. And this one is equal all around. She kind of kisses everyone. So maybe not something you want to like settle down with or something like that. But this could happen at pretty much any stage, any round. And the way you want to change your playstyle a little bit is people are going to be a little more healthy. This can be compared to a lot of portals which give bonus health. That has kind of existed in a lot of sets of TFT. It's really good if you're like greeding your economy a bunch because you could sack 1, maybe 2 more rounds before you really do a cash out. So if you are doing like a fortune strat, it's a little better here. If you're trying to like fast 8 and you're trying to roll like 50 gold instead of 30 gold on fast 8, this is a little bit better for that too. But essentially playing more for like early game, gonna be a little bit worse on this encounter, but it's not the end of the world if you do that. That's what I like about most of these encounters. Even though they affect things a bunch, if you go like all in on a certain strategy because you have like the exact start you need for it, you have everything working for that. Obviously, if the encounter does not align with that strategy, you're going to do a little worse, but it's not something to change your entire game about. Next up we have is Ahri's second encounter. Ahri bestows your team a combat blessing for the rest of the game. Choices are gain 150 health, AP, or AD. So the decision between AP or AD is pretty easy. It's like, what team comp are you going? Are you going for an attack damage comp or an ability power comp? That's how you decide that one. I don't really have to help you too much on that. But the bigger decision comes when you're comparing health versus some sort of attack buff. So health is good if it's kind of early in the game. So if you get this in stage 2, flat health is really nice. It helps you win a bunch of rounds, and you can kind of flex into different paths later on. You're not forced into AP or forced into AD and then feel bad about it later on in the game. Another time to choose health is if you have a lot of frontliners. So if you have like 6 tanks and 2 damage dealers, maybe the health is going to be a bit more valuable. However, if you're the opposite, you only have 2 tanks and 6 damage dealers, then definitely go for the damage. I think overall I value like the damage a little bit more than the health in the later parts of the game. But again, it comes down to how many units actually benefit from that buff. And you might have noticed already, some champions have 1 encounter, some have multiple. If you have multiple encounters from Ahri, for example, and you get the Ahri's Kiss early on in the game, Ahri won't show up again. You know, she's going to ghost you, and her second encounter isn't going to happen that game. So keep that in mind. Same for Elune, Amumu, Ashe, Azir, things like that. If you see one of those champions encounters, you cannot see their other ones during that game. Next up, though, we have Elune. So Elune adds a completed item to each champion on carousel. You don't really need to change up your gameplay too much here because you kind of find out about it on the carousel, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Obviously, just go for an item that you kind of like. What I like to do when I balance out items is whenever this happens, you want to try to itemize more than just 2 units, because typically in TFT, you get enough items to itemize like a tank and a damage dealer or 2 damage dealers. But whenever you get extra items through like augments, portals, or encounters, you want to think about that secondary carry as well, so you itemize like 3, even 4 people. Next up we have is Elune will permanently empower 1 tier champions you choose. And this one's going to be 2 cost champions gaining 200 health, 20% attack speed, 3 cost 150 health, 15% attack speed, 4 cost 100 health, and 10% attack speed. So if you get this in the later parts of the game, so if you get it on like stage 3, for example, that's the latest you could get this encounter, go for whatever comp you're going for. If you're doing 2 cost reroll, obviously get the 2 cost one. If you're doing 3 cost reroll, obviously get the 3 cost one. If you're going for fast 8 or standard leveling, obviously 4 cost is going to be best for you. But what happens if you get this early on in stage 2? In stage 2, I actually like to tailor it to my board. So even if I'm doing a fast 8, I might take the 2 cost or 3 cost buff in order to win streak during stage 2, be a little more healthy, maybe have a little more gold from win streaking, and then kind of sacrifice the buff later on. That's how I like to play it if I get offered this in stage 2, but obviously if you get it in stage 3, it's a little bit easier to do. But stage 2 is where it's tricky. If you're doing like full lose streak and you know you're fast dating, then you could consider getting the 4 cost buff, but honestly it's not that much. I'd rather just buff up my 2 cost units to just try to steamroll the early game. Her last encounter is going to be offering you a choice of completed items. Obviously, just take the items that you actually need for your team and follow the same rules that I laid out here for the carousel one. All right, now let's move on to Amumu. Amumu gives amazing gifts to anyone who will be his friend. All right. Fight a challenging PvE round with powerful rewards, or your team gains +1 size. So I actually think they removed this one because I've not personally seen this or seen other people take it. But if it does still exist, obviously you need to see if you even want the extra team size. Sometimes you don't need it. And in those cases, you'd want to do the other one and fight the PvE round. Obviously, if your team is really weak, don't even try. Just take the +1 team size. Another reason to take the fight is if you really want to try to high roll. A lot of games like Yurei secured your top 4 and your team kind of isn't going to get that much stronger. But if you take a big risk, you could potentially get maybe like a 3rd place. Then yeah, go for this one because Yurei have 4th place secured. That's really all there is to that, but I don't think this encounter exists anymore, but someone please correct me if I'm wrong. The next one is Carousel is full of Amumu's 2-star 3 cost friends. Pretty much for all the Carousel ones, you don't really plan around this because they kind of just happen, and obviously if one of those units is good for you, take it and prioritize it a bit over the item, but if not, just go for the item still and then just sell it. But you don't have to sell the unit, you could always just place it on your board, play it temporarily as like kind of just a strong unit that you could kind of use. Next one up we have is Annie. Annie offers you better shops and more gold in the next few rounds. So for 3 rounds, your shops are 1 level higher, or for 3 rounds, double your interest. If you're going to be rolling, take the first option. If you're still saving up to Power Spike, do the second one. Next one up we have is Aphelios. Calls down 2 component anvils for you. This is just a generic more item encounter. Think about your secondary carry or even your tertiary carry. Ashe reveals your upcoming opponents for the rest of the game, and then her other one is doing it for the next 3-player combats. Just be sure to scout, because it's just like a small optimization you can do. Like, you should be scouting every turn, but you normally have like 3 potential matchups. Knowing your exact opponents and knowing how to position around them, you have to do a lot of last second swaps to kind of take full advantage of that. But knowing positioning kind of just comes with time. I can't just tell you like every single positioning trick in set 11 right now, because that'd probably take like maybe a couple hours to explain, you know, and even then it might not cover everything. Azir grants 6 free rerolls that last until used. This one can show up from stages 3 through 6. And in these, just save the rerolls for whenever you would normally roll. I wouldn't just use them right away because they last until used. But you definitely could decide to be like a little more liberal with using them. Next one up we have is Azir moves the 3-2 and 4-2 augments to random rounds. This makes it a little annoying. I've had this happen before, and then like I get a bunch of augments early, or I get the last one a little bit later. It definitely messes with your leveling timings a little bit. So if you do get the second augment a little earlier, you are able to commit to a certain comp a little faster. But if these augments do come later, you kind of have to play a bit more flexibly. So that's kind of how I would approach that. Next one up we have is Bard. Each player levels up to level 3. I believe this gives 6 experience, because going from level 1 to 2 is 2 experience, going from level 2 to 3 is another 2 experience, and then you start off the game, and then normally you start off stage 2-1 with like 2 out of 6 XP, so it gives like 6 experience. Just pretend you have 6 extra gold that game. Nothing really much else to do there, except you cannot do 1 cost reroll. It's going to be very difficult to. Do not recommend doing that, but every other comp is going to be perfectly fine. So don't like collect all the 1 cost units for like Kog'Maw reroll, for example, when you get this Bard thing. Caitlyn grants you 4 free rerolls this round. I mean, just use them. This one's kind of like an RNG one because The teams that want to roll that round or like are the right level to roll that round or that have a lot of pairs are going to benefit a lot from this, but you can't really plan around this one. Cho'Gath gives you 2 lesser champion duplicators or 1 champion duplicator. If you're going reroll, go for the 2 lessers. If you're going 4 or 5 cost, use the regular one. Also, if you get the lesser duplicators early on in like stage 2 and 3, do not be afraid to just use them and just get a really buff team. So even if you're going for like a fast 8, and you might think, hey, let me take the regular champion duplicator, you still could take a lesser one and just like double Nico a 3 cost unit and just win streak all of stage 2 and 3. Like that is very possible to do. But if you are doing some sort of reroll comp, I like using like 1 duplicator to kind of stabilize and then use the second one to find the last copy. Of course, if you already have a 2-star of your desired unit, just save both of these and just use them for the last 2 copies. Cho'Gath offers you a boon if you sate his hunger. So lose a shop slot forever, gain 3 component anvils, or decline the offer. This one's kind of tricky to use. The later in the game, I like using his offer a lot more. So if you're in like stage 5 and you get this Cho'Gath thing, like definitely take the component anvils because you don't really care about that last shop unless you're like 1 off something, you know, or like 2 off something. But if you get this in stage 3, I probably would decline the offer unless you're just playing for a top 4 because it's really difficult to like upgrade all your units if you just have 1 less shop slot, you know, like your rolls are 20% worse. That's how you could kind of think about it. So if I bust out my calculator and say you do like 50 rolls in a game, so that'd be 100 gold, you'd essentially be losing 20 gold, you know? Actually, that trade doesn't seem that bad. 3 components for 20 gold, that's actually a pretty good deal in my opinion. But let's say you do like 100 rolls, then you're rolling 200 gold, times 0.8, that's going to be 160. You're losing 40 gold. Probably not a good deal. So it depends how much you're going to be rolling that game. If you already have your whole team upgraded and you're just going to power level from that point on, like sure, take the component anvils even if it's early, but generally in stage 3, you want to decline this offer. Next up we have is Darius. Enemy champions have a 30% chance of dropping loot when killed. So just play for win streak more when you get this. For 5 rounds, Darius transforms champions on highlighted bench slots into random ones for the same cost. This helps reroll a lot. So if you were leaning into a reroll comp, this could definitely be a sign to like commit to it. Darius gives you the choice between 20 XP or 10 free rerolls. So if you're the right level to roll, take the rolls. If you want to power level, take the XP. Pretty self-explanatory. Diana, when you sell a unit, Diana cleaves their completed items into components. So if you slammed a lot of items early game and you want to pivot out of this, or if you're playing flex, this is a very useful encounter because you could just reset all your items and make new stuff. Just be careful though, because sometimes you don't want to sell the unit because they're still pretty powerful on your board. I find myself not using this encounter that much because I try not to build like components I'm not going to use. But if you build something to kind of win streak in the early game with, and then you have a chance to get out of it and the unit it's on isn't important to your team, I don't know why you would put an item on a unit that isn't important, but if that is the case, this encounter is going to be very good for you. This one, it does this for only 1 round. Sorry, I just mixed both of these together. So everything I said goes for this second one where it only lasts for 1 round. When you get the first one, which is lasting forever, like just pretend you have salvage bin, that's essentially what it is. Like you are rewarded for playing flexibly. So just slam as many items as you can and like don't have any items on your bench. Sorry that I mixed those two up. The next one up we have is Diana offers you a treasure armory that can be rerolled up to 3 times. So I've noticed this one gives like varying strengths of awards. They either give like 1 component, 1 full item, or they give like a radiant item and some other stuff. I think that's this one, but obviously like just roll until you get something that's like a bit more than usable. Whenever I get a ton of items, again, think of your secondary, tertiary carries, and also try to mix and match your items a bit. If you have 3 damage items, no tank items, focus more on the tank items, and if you have the opposite situation, focus more on the damage items. Kabuko invites you to dance with them. The more players that join, the better the reward. All right, so normally you're peer pressured into joining and then people ping you if you don't dance, but some comps don't really like extra loot, so do keep that in mind. The loot is typically either gold or items, I believe. And then if you're playing a comp that only cares about 1 unit, you don't care about the extra items, so you actually don't want to dance in a lot of situations. However, if you're playing for like a lot of 4-cost units or you're playing like a lot of legendary units, then yeah, you want to get as much loot as possible to kind of itemize everyone up. Next up we have is Galio adds a defensive component to every champion on the carousel. Can't really plan around this one too much. Garen, for the next 3 rounds, any champion purchase gains 100 permanent health. Good if you're trying to pivot into something else. If not, you might have to just buy units and then like swap them later. But don't stress too much about this. Like, it isn't that big of a difference, especially since it only shows up in stages 4 and 5. Gnar lets you reroll the next augment, offering 1 additional time. I thought this was Teemo's, but I guess it's Gnar's. Don't data check too much when you do this. I know you all love going to teamfight.lol. You love going to the augment section and looking up the win rates of each and every augment. You love doing it, I love doing it, we should be doing it, you know, but there comes a point where it takes up too much time and then we run out of time to do our turn. So only do this if you're fast about it. So just like type it in really quickly here, whatever like augment you're looking for, and then like type all 3 of them in, look at the win rates based on your stage. They're like, oh, 2 for 1 is 4.38 on stage 3-2. Maybe it's not that great compared to, let's say, Lucky Gloves Plus, which is a 4.14, you know, but obviously also tailor it to your team. Data isn't everything. But normally we check around 6 augments. If you're checking 9 augments, that is a lot. Like, you don't have time to do that in most cases, but just be fast about it. Like, that's why you should know what most augments do and what their win rates are, like, before you get into the game as much as possible. And then just use the data check for, like, maybe after the game when you're analyzing or something like that. The next one we have is Gnar fills a carousel with 2-star 2-cost champions, so treat it as the same one as the Amumu thing. Hui causes your first shop to be tailored for the rest of your game. This really helps a lot of those vertical comps, so if you're going like 7 Story Weaver and you only have 5 right now, you have a higher chance of getting Aurelia perhaps. If you're doing like a Umbral reroll and you're going for like all 6 Umbral units, gonna help you as well. I think those are the comps that like really benefit from this, is all those like vertical comps which go really deep into a trait. Next one is Hui paints a dummy for the next 5 rounds. Gain 1 gold each time it survives player combat. So for this one, you could kind of greed the dummy and place it in the back to try to get 1 gold, but honestly, I don't think it's that worth it. I'd rather just have the dummy in the front and try to help me win the fight, because you want the dummy to take damage before your champions do. It's just like a generic tank unit. So I typically don't play around with the 1 gold. I just leave the training dummy up front to try to help me win, because I think that's a bit more important than 1 gold. Last one is Hui paints an entire carousel full of 5-cost champions. Again, can't really plan around some of the carousel ones. But next one up we have is Illaoi. Grants you 8 free rerolls this round. Just use them. Can't plan around it. It's going to help those comps that are already the level they want to be. But let's say it's stage 3-3 and you wanted to level up to level 7 on stage 3-5. There is an argument to do it this turn and then just use the 8 rerolls. So those are cases where you want to like break the leveling pattern rules, because 8 rerolls is 16 gold. That is a lot of gold. So if you really want the level 7 shops instead of the level 6 shops, even though you lose a lot of gold by leveling up early, it's more than well worth it, because you don't end up losing all that much because you get 16 free gold from these rerolls. Illaoi moves the stage 3-2 augment to a random round. Again, if you're trying to commit to your comp really early, sometimes the augment round happening a bit later can kind of screw you over. So try to play more flexibly in those cases, and if it does happen earlier, you're allowed to like tunnel into a comp a little quicker. Aurelia frees all players to move freely on this carousel, so this is going to benefit the win streakers. Can't really plan around it, unfortunately. A lot of the carousel ones are just really RNG based, I've noticed. Aurelia makes your next 6 shops contain a unit of each cost. This is decent for a bunch of reroll comps that are perhaps low level and can't really see the expensive units as much, but it kind of hurts the comp that already leveled up and already kind of see everything. But obviously, like, can't really plan around this. Just use the next 6 shops and kind of hope for the best. Janna grants you 2 Zephyrs, which vanish after 3 rounds. Just be sure to scout every single round. Janna gives you the choice between different champions, 2-star 1-cost unit, 2 random 2-cost units, or a 3-cost unit. So looking at it from a gold perspective, 2-cost units is going to be the best. 3-cost unit I think is going to be the worst, because it gives you the least amount of power and it gives you less gold than 2-cost units. I'd pretty much only take the 3-cost unit if I'm forcing some type of 3-cost reroll, but I'm not really sure which yet, or if I have a bunch of 3-cost pairs on my bench. But that's going to be pretty rare in stage 2. I typically either take the 2-cost champions, or if I want a win streak, get the 2-star 1-cost. Janna offers you a treasury armory that can be re-rolled up to 10 times. I think this is the same treasure armory as Diana's, where it gives you like a regular item and a component, or it gives you like a radiant item and 2 other things. This one you could definitely be more aggressive in the re-rolls with, so just keep that in mind. Like, if you have like a pretty takeable option as your first option, I'd argue to roll it to try to get like an even better one. because you have so many rerolls and they're all free. Jax offers you a weapon from different armories. Open up an artifact armory or a support armory. So support and artifact items are equal in power. So when would you want an artifact item and when do you want a support item? Well, if you have a primary carry which already has 3 items, I would almost never take the artifact armory, even if I have a secondary carry that I could itemize. The reason why is that normally your primary carry is like by far the most important unit that the secondary carry isn't really worth investing that much into. I'd much rather have a support item for my primary guy because that generally helps out my team a lot more in like 90% of comps. There are exceptions to the rule, but generally that's going to be the case. So I would only take the artifact armory if I have open slots on both my tank and my damage dealer because I don't know what type of item I'm going to get. I might get only tank items, in which case I'd be like, thank God I have an open slot on my tank. Or I might get only damage items, in which case I'm like, thank God I have open slots on my damage dealers. So generally I'm going to be taking the support armory a bit more. If it's early game, I like the artifact one. If it's later game, I like the support one. Next one up we have is Jax. Gives you a choice between rerolls or champions. Gain 3 rerolls or 2 random 2-cost champions. So if you're leveling up really hard, take the gold. If you're doing a reroll, take the rerolls. Simple as that. Kai'Sa offers you an item remover with infinite uses or gold. So you could either gain 5 gold or gain a golden item remover. So if you need to use the item remover, obviously take it. So a lot of times, let's say I'm playing Story Weaver and I have a bunch of tank items. I put it on my Garen and I'm thinking, later on I'll buy a new Garen, replace the Garen, and then put the tank items on my 4-cost tank. That happens all the time, right? If you get the item remover, you don't need to wait for that extra Garen, so it's a bit easier to do. And in those cases, I would take the remover. But if you're going to be swapping out your whole team anyways, and you get this kind of early, the 5 gold definitely does help out a bit more. I think in terms of like a value perspective, the item remover is worth more than 5 gold, the golden one that is. But the way I play TFT, I don't really need to remove my items that often, so I lean more towards the 5 gold, even though I think this is a very good deal. I'm probably misplaying a bit, but I think as the set goes on, I'll get more used to it. Kayn gives you a Deathblade and a Death Cap. These last for 3 rounds. Yeah, just throw them on your 2-star units. All these temporary item things, like a lot of people think like, I should put this on like the person it's best in slot for. That would be wrong. You want to put it on your upgraded units. So one example of that is if you have like Warden snipers or just like any generic frontline backline. And let's say you have a 2-star Caitlyn, 2-star Garen, but you have a 1-star Amumu, 1-star Aphelios. Even though you might be playing Aphelios carry later on and like Deathblade is one of his best items, I'd probably put the Deathblade on Caitlyn just because she's 2-star. If I got a random tank item that was temporary, I know this one isn't the case, but there are other ones that give temporary items. I'd place it on the 2-star, not the 1-star, because 2-stars just benefit a lot more from those items. Also, since it disappears anyways, if you weren't gonna itemize Garen in general, like the item falls off, so you're not really too worried about that. Always put items on your upgraded units. Obviously, if you're super lucky and you have a 2-star Amumu, then yeah, like put the items on him and not the Garen. But that's normally not the case. Kayn's second option is the game ends now. Your current position is your final placement. Can't really plan around this one. Don't ever try to plan around this one because it means like you'll never lose streak, which is very suboptimal. This encounter is extremely rare, so do not worry about it. Like if it happens, it happens. At 5-4, the game ends. Your position then is your final placement. If you get this one instead, just play for the early game. Honestly, stage 5-4 is pretty late in the game anyways. So a lot of times you want to play those comps that like cap out around like level 8. 3-cost reroll is a bit risky because oftentimes you find your 3-star 3-cost around like early stage 5, late stage 4, and then they're not active for that long. So I would recommend going against those comps unless you have like a lot of champion duplicators and you're able to complete them right away. Speaking of that, if you have like a bunch of econ augments, it's pretty good in this, oddly enough, because you're able to spike your team really early. Typically, I say only take 1 econ augment and then get 2 combat augments. But in cases like this, you could go for like 2, even 3 econ augments because you're able to super power spike during stage 4. And then typically combat augments scale really well late into the game because everyone has upgraded units. And then the only difference between you and the other person is that you have harm assist and they don't. But econ augments allow you to get 2 stars very reliably, and then you just super stabilize on stage 4. And then by the time stage 5-4 comes around, the game ends, you're like top half of the leaderboard in a lot of cases, you're going to be good to go. So typically I say like get the econ augment in stage 2 and then take combat in stage 3 and 4, but I'd actually advise doing the opposite for this one. Take a combat augment in stage 2, try to win streak during that time, And then stage 3, take an econ augment. Stage 4, you could even take another econ augment. Use it though, use it quickly. So you spike around early stage 4, and then hopefully you get a decent placement. So like Prismatic Ticket, really, really good, for example, because it allows you to get pretty much any comp you want, any reroll comp, you're gonna get a 3-star of whatever unit. Usually Prismatic Ticket falls off around like stage 6-ish or late stage 5, and you just don't experience that when you face the Kayn. Kha'Zix causes XP to cost 3 gold instead of 4 this game. Evolve. Power leveling is gonna be a lot better, so if you ever see this and you're like rerolling at that point, you might want to switch off into a different comp. Kha'Zix gives you the next augment immediately. Can't really plan around that, but if you did want to commit to something a bit earlier, you get to do so a little bit earlier. Then Kha'Zix causes XP to cost 3 gold instead of 4 for the next 3 rounds. Evolve. Definitely take advantage of this. I typically like waiting until the final round is active to spend all my gold because you get more interest that way, but pretty much you want to deprioritize rolling a little bit whenever this happens. So normally if you roll like 10 gold to stabilize, I'd kind of skip that and spend more gold into XP instead to try to reach the next threshold. Kindred grants you 3 training dummies, which last for 3 rounds. Just use them. Try to add more damage units if you can help it. So if you're ever in a position where you're like, should I play 4 sniper, 2 warden, or 4 warden, 2 sniper? When you have the training dummies, opt for the 4 sniper, 2 warden, or whatever synergies you're running that game. Kindred offers you a temporary item which lasts for 3 rounds. Use the same logic as we did before with the other items over here. Kindred decrees only even levels exist this game. I actually think they removed this one. The way I'm checking is I'm like looking at the Influencer challenge, which is like a couple of streamers, they just are in a race to see who sees all the encounters first, and like some are not listed there. So I think they actually removed this one. Her next one is offers a choice, red or blue. This is just red buff or blue buff. Whichever item you need, take it. So that one's not too complicated, right? Kog'Maw moves the 2-1 augment to a random round. Yeah, this one's a little tricky. Like, just play normal TFT. You will get the augment eventually, but keep in mind, like, the econ augments are going to be a bit worse because if they show up a bit later, you just get less econ. So I'd lean more towards combat augments if you can help it. Lee Sin offers you a treasure armory that can be rerolled up to 10 times. Isn't this the same one as... Okay, like, I swear this one shows up all the time, but I don't know whose it is. Maybe they show up at different stages. No, it's the same stages. I don't know. I guess they have the same one. Lilia moves all the augments to random rounds. Very confusing stuff. Kind of use the same like econ augment rule as like for this one. If it's earlier than it normally is, the econ augment's going to be better. If it's later than it is, the econs are going to be worse and the combats are going to be better. That's kind of how you play around that one. Lissandra offers to sell you items for an expensive price. She is not kidding for this. So normally, this is the biggest noob trap ever. People love items, so they almost always buy stuff, but these are very overpriced. A component is not worth 12 gold. It's worth like maybe 7 or 8. If it's an anvil, maybe 9 or 10, not 12. Holy cow, that is so much. The artifact anvil, how much is that worth? So we could look at Portable Forge, which gives you an artifact anvil. So that's gonna be a gold augment, right? So what are the econ augments from the gold augments? Let's take a look at that. One of them is Balanced Budget Plus, which is on stage 4. So this one gives you 9 times 4 gold, which is 36 gold. So it's like, that's a lot, but obviously that's stage 4. The regular Balanced Budget only gives you 28 gold, but you could already see like 28 gold versus an Artifact Anvil, and then you're like Artifact Anvil for 22 gold. It's a bit different, right? Like obviously this is gold over time, so it's worth a bit less, but like, I'm pretty sure the Portable Forge one is like slightly overpriced. Maybe I'd pay like 20 gold for it. 22 is like kind of getting into the more expensive territory. I know 2 gold might not seem like a lot, but just imagine you're doing your grocery shopping and you're like, hey, this thing costs like 50% more than it normally is. It's like not enough to stop you from buying it a lot of times, but like, you know, it's like a little overpriced than what you're normally seeing. So I guess it's not that atrocious of a deal for the artifact anvil, but the component anvil is absolute garbage. Like, do not pick that one ever. So oftentimes, like, do nothing for this. Also, in the early game, like, gold is worth more. So in stage 3, if I got this, like, for sure pass even on the artifact one. If you get this, like, super duper in the late game, like, apparently you could get this in stage 6. Like, sure, you have no other use for the gold, get the artifact anvil. But yeah, that's like very specific. This Lissandra one is one I believe doesn't exist as well, because I was looking to see what this augment actually does. So I looked at other people's replays. I must have gone through like over 50 games, and then like I played a bunch of games too. I've watched other games without specifically looking for this augment, and I've never seen it. It's also not in the like influencer list or whatever, so I think they removed this one. Lux moves to stage 4 to augment to a random round. Same rules for the other augments applies here. Lux grants you 2 support items. They vanish in 3 rounds. Just try to make the most of them as you can. It's kind of hard to play around these. I wouldn't like swap my team or anything like that. Malphite this round, anytime you bench a unit, Malphite knocks their items off, so it's just like a free item remover if you need it. I typically don't use this one because like I only put items on units I think are going to be good, but obviously if you get this other one which lasts forever, like just slam all your items, don't really care about who it goes on, and then like move items to your upgraded units. So it's kind of the situation in the team builder we looked at before where we have like an Aphelios 1 versus like a Caitlyn 2-star. Sometimes we put the items on Aphelios because we're like, hey, we need this Caitlyn for later for holding snipers, and I want to put my items on Aphelios though because he's my main damage dealer. In those cases, pop it off Aphelios, put the items on Caitlyn, and then switch them back later on. Morgana fills a carousel with 4-cost champions. Can't really plan around this one. Morgana offers you a choice: upgrade your next 2-cost champion or gain gold. So if you're trying to win streak, this one is offered in stages 2 and 3. Take this one. If you're trying to lose streak, go for the 10 gold. Nautilus grants you gold on enemy kill or allied death last 3 rounds. Well, are you winning or losing, son? You know, that's what's going to decide your pick there. Neeko, add a champion duplicator to every champion on the carousel. I really like to fast 8 with this one because you're able to just use the duplicator early, get a 2-star 4-cost, and hopefully carry you a little bit. Neeko summons a random 3-star 1-cost spirit to help for 3-player combats. This is just RNG fest. There are many good 3-star 1-costs and there are many bad ones. What can you do? You know, it's literally just luck of the draw here. Neeko summons a random 5-cost spirit to help for 3-player combats. Kind of the same thing there. You could play around with the synergies a bit. That definitely does change things. Neeko adds a lesser champion duplicator to every champion on carousel. If you're doing fast 8, remember to use a duplicator early. If you're re-rolling, then save it for the last copy. Ornn offers you a choice of artifacts. Great for comps with multiple carries. Ornn adds an artifact for each champion on carousel, same thing. Ornn forges 6 artifact items which last for 1 round. Absolutely hilarious. I've not actually seen this one, but obviously just put the items on your 2-star units. Do not put them on the 1-star units. Qiyana decrees that every champion on carousel has a Radiant item. Kind of same logic as this one over here. Qiyana offers you a choice of Radiant items. Again, kind of same logic as this one. Rakan encourages you to recombobulate your board or he'll give you some gold. So you could either get 10 gold or recombobulate your board and get 2 magnetic removers. If you have a lot of upgrades, recombobulate. If not, don't. It's that simple. I think people get baited into the recombobulate. It is good. I'm not saying it's bad, but we kind of have to compare the augments again. Recombobulator is a silver augment, and we could kind of compare this to 1, 2, 3s or maybe misconnections. Misconnection gives you 15 gold. So technically, it's worth it to recombobulate your board, but only in scenarios where you actually have upgrades. Also, if you're forcing a comp, obviously don't recombobulate, or if you like built a ton of items already, it's really, really risky, but I guess that's the luck of the draw. If you have, for some reason, a 2-star 3-cost or a 2-star 4-cost at this stage even, or like a 3-star 1-cost, it could be worth it to recombobulate, but in most cases, I'm probably going to go with the 10 gold. His next one is kind of the same thing, except it's 5 gold. This one happens in stage 2 instead of stage 3. Kind of the same logic applies, but if you have a lot of random upgrades, like sometimes during stage 2, I have a 2-star 3-cost really early. Like, yeah, recombobulate, you're gonna like turbo win streak, you know? Riven adds a component to each champion on the carousel. I think we already went over one that's really similar to this one. Senna offers you to set you on a win streak or lose streak. So the time I encountered this encounter, I was on like a 10-game win streak already. So I just took the 3 gold because setting my win streak to 6 or loss streak to 6 wouldn't have really done anything. So in those cases where you're already streaking, just take the 3 gold. And to decide whether you want the win streak or lose streak, look at your matchups, see if you're going to win or lose against them, and then like choose whichever one. And then if you get unlucky on the matchup, like that's just RNG. It's part of the game. Set, working out with Set makes you bigger. I swear this one happens every single game. I don't know. Like this is like one of the most popular encounters I've seen. It just griefs the carousel. There's really not much to it. There's also a trick if you're running, I think it's called like tons of poros, like the one with a lot of poros. You could go on someone's board and then do the whole like avalanche thing and then like clog up their screen to kind of mess with them. That's the only thing you could like do with the set. You could also do that during carousel rounds, I believe, and make people miss their carousel. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So maybe there is a bit of a pay to win aspect to TFT. If you use like the fluffed up poros, I think that's actually the name, you can grief some players. But apart from that, it just like makes carousel a bit weird. For the next 3 rounds, Set lends you some training dummies. We already went over this encounter on a different champion. Shen watches over a carousel where every champion has a support item. I really like support items when you're playing a team comp that only cares about one champion, and then you get like Banshee's Veil or like Chalice of Power or Zeke's Herald to kind of really buff them up, put them over the top, depending on what buff you need. But if you don't have those and you're playing like multi-carry comps, go for like the general support ones such as Radiant Virtue, like Shroud of Stillness, Zephyr, or if you're doing extra effort, you can data check. So go to stats, items, click on support items over here, and yeah, you could see which ones have the best win rate. And then you're like, maybe Zz'Rot Portal over Zephyr, Aegis over Randuin's, for example, things like that. Data checking is useful, but like obviously in the super late game, Zephyr has to be completely broken as in good, because you just completely negate someone's primary carry for like a couple seconds. Like how can that ever be bad, you know? The easiest to use ones are definitely like Virtue of the Martyr, Aegis of the Legion, maybe Zz'Rot Portal, things like that. Shen offers you a choice of starter packs containing champions and one component. Just pick the one that you need, you know? Like if you're going Arcanist, boy, I wonder what I should be picking, you know? That's kind of how this works. Sivir's Rallying Cry makes you speedy. Again, really only affects Carousel, but be very careful because like you get really fast. So it's like, I've seen people mispick their items all the time. It's really funny if you get Sivir and Set. That one's where it gets a little goofy. Soraka offers you a choice of support items, so same thing as this one. Well, a little bit different, but Soraka adds a support item to each champion on Carousel. Syndra moves a 2-1 and 4-2 augments to random rounds. We kind of already went over that one. Syndra unleashes a carousel of 2-star 4-cost champions. This one's so stupid because if you really need a champion, like normally on carousels you prioritize the item. On this one, definitely prioritize a champion because getting a 2-star 4-cost, wow. Like you don't even need to, that saves you so much gold. It's 12 gold and you don't have to roll. Normally I'm rolling like 40 gold to find like a 2-star 4-cost champion. Like holy cow. To find one copy sometimes, not even like a 2-star copy. Like, go for the champion there. The item doesn't matter. Tahm Kench, stand in puddles to catch fish for Tahm Kench. The more fish he eats, the more loot everyone gets. So normally everyone already like stands on all the puddles. Like not everyone has to participate to get everything. But this reminds me of the Kabuka one. So use the same logic there where like if you are a 1-carry comp, don't try to catch fish. If you're like a multi-carry comp, then yeah, like more loot the better, you know? Sometimes it gives gold though, in which case it doesn't really matter. Well, it does matter depending if you're like going heavy econ or not. So it's kind of RNG there. Tahm Kench offers you a component anvil or 10 gold. So this price is a little bit more fair. Like I said before, a component's worth around like 7 gold. An anvil might make it worth like 8, 9, maybe 10. It's a little expensive still, but it's not egregiously expensive. You know, it's like when you go to get a Costco hot dog, they cost $1.50. And you also get a soda too, right? Like that's obviously an amazing deal. That doesn't exist here, but let's pretend the regular component costs $1.50. But then you go to a hot dog stand in Central Park and they charge you $8 for a hot dog. That's what the Lissandra one feels like. Lissandra's charging me $8 for a hot dog. But this one, it feels more like this regular street stands that are not in Central Park. They charge around like $4, $3, which to me, it's still expensive for a hot dog. I can't justify that, but like, there are situations where I'll be like, fine, I'll just buy it. I want the hot dog, whatever. But it's a little pricey to me. But if you're getting it in the late game, it could be well worth it, especially if it's after stage 5 and you have a leftover component on your bench. This is automatically worth a lot more. So that's the one exception. But if you get this in like stage 3 or 4, I'd probably pass on it. After stage 5, if you do not have any item components on your bench, obviously not worth it. But if you do, then well worth it. That's kind of how I would treat this one. Kind of think of it if it's like, if you're hungry, like the hot dog's worth it. If you're not, like, obviously don't buy the hot dog, you know? Teemo lets you reroll all your augments in extra time this game. Again, data checkers beware. Teemo adds a golden spatula to every champion on Carousel. You need to know what all the spatulas make. So when we go to emblems, all the like plain looking color ones, you cannot make any of these, but all the ones with a certain color like Mythic, Ghostly, Porcelain, Umbral, Faded, Dryad, you could all build those. Just know what item combos make them and like try to lean into one of those comps. Or you could maybe get a spatula later on somehow and then make a Force of Nature. That'd be even better. But you can't really do much about it if you're forcing like one of the comps that doesn't use anything here. That's just what we call an unlucky. Teemo guesses the outcome of your next fight. Teemo grants you a reward if you're correct, so you could get 14 gold for a win or 7 gold if you lose. So obviously, like, just look at your matchups, try to predict. Like, some people might grief a little bit. I guess you don't really know what other people are taking. I haven't actually gotten this encounter yet. Seems a little fun, but obviously it's going to depend on the strength of your team. Thresh moves the 2-1 and 3-2 augments to random rounds, same treatment as all the other random augment round things. Thresh releases a carousel of champions all carrying artifacts, so all those comps that use multiple units can be a lot better. Tristana grants a gift of gold. I mean, you just get more gold. Great for people who are kind of like lose streaking for a lot of the game. They could like stabilize a lot earlier. If you get this early on, definitely lean into the more econ heavy strategies. Udyr grants 4 free rerolls that last until used. Just save these for whichever level you would normally roll at. Udyr grants you a support item which lasts for 3 rounds. Locket of the Iron Solari or Zeke's Herald. If you have a lot of frontliners, take Locket. If you have a lot of backliners, take Zeke's. Udyr grants you 2 components based on the chosen spirit. Defense, attack, magic, or you lack the gold to offer the spirit. I mean, if you need tank items, obviously take defense. If you need damage items, take whichever one is relevant. Nothing too complicated there. But one thing you need to note is like look at the components on your bench. Which ones do you need to complete items? That's another way to kind of think about this. Volibear fills the carousel with 3 cost champions. Can't really plan around that. Just take the item that you need normally and just like sell your 3 gold. Wukong grants you 6 radiant items which last for 1 round. Have fun with that one. Wukong activates Chosen. 2-star units that count twice for a trade, sell your Chosen to buy a new one. Does this one exist? I don't think it does. They probably removed this one because it doesn't show up here. That'd be kind of funny though, right? Wukong adds a radiant item to each champion on this carousel. So again, all the bonus item guidelines that we kind of talked about before apply here. Yasuo, for the next 4-player combats, Yasuo grants 200 temporary health to units that start in the back 3 rows. So just like push everyone back a little bit. 3 rows is a lot. You don't need to be in the front row. Honestly, I thought Yasuo's encounter was different. Maybe I was thinking of something else. Oh, the other Windcrapper. Yone lets you re-roll the next augment offering 2 times. Same as the Teemo, same as the Gnar and the Teemo, I believe. And then Yone adds bonus offensive components to every champion on the carousel. Same item rules apply there. And then Yorick reduces the cost of your shop re-rolls by 1. This one's actually pretty important. Like, re-roll becomes a lot better. You tend to not want to spend gold on leveling up when rerolls are 50% off. If you like chicken, but pork goes on sale 50%, like you're eating pork that week, you know? So like chicken is leveling up, pork is rolling your gold. Yorick essentially is telling you to buy pork. Yorick lets you always field at least 7 champions, regardless of level, gain 10 gold. If you're low level, this is really good. So for all the 1-cost rerolls, this is actually fantastic because you can fit your whole team without needing to level up. So that's really nice to do. This also makes lose streaking very dangerous because you take a lot more damage. So you probably want to try to win streak whenever you see this. Yorick reduces the cost to reroll your shop by 1 for the next 3 rounds. So this one is the same one as the first one, but it's temporary. So it's a flash sale, you know, you got to get the pork now. All right, Zoe grants you 2 Trickster's Glass. They vanish in 3 rounds. Try to put these on your upgraded champions. Again, it's like the whole Warden Sniper thing we saw before, whether you want to itemize Garen or a Mumu. You want to do it on whoever's 2-star. Next one is Zoe changes reality so that only odd levels exist in this game. So this one changes the leveling odds. It goes from like level 3 to level 5 is 12 gold. Level 5 to level 7 is 44 gold. And then level 7 to level 9 is 90 gold. So it does change things up quite a bit. Like obviously going for a 2-cost reroll, probably don't want to do that because you want level 6 for that. Not going to be happening. 1-cost reroll is a bit better because you can roll a lot at level 3 because it takes a little longer before you passively level up. But you have to really make sure you hit that champion 3-star in that time frame. And then lastly, like 3-cost reroll gonna be good because you're at level 7, but you could also just play normal, go to level 9 really quickly, and then have some fun time. Last one up, we have a Zyra chosen component. Zyra grants you 3 copies of it. So this one, like, just pick the component you need. If you need tank items, this is really useful because you could just build like a Declaw, Bramble, or a what's it called? A Warmogs. I think the Thieves Gloves is pretty interesting too because you could just itemize a random person with a Thieves Glove and then have an extra glove to kind of use for whatever items you want. It's a good flex item. And then obviously, if you want to go for like full AP, full AD, or if you need a blue buff, choose that component, you know? But that is going to be all like over 100 augments. So hopefully this guide helped you out. If you want to check this out, go to the website teamfight.lol, go to database, go to encounters. That's where you'll find this list here. I kind of use the same framework for a lot of these, and you just kind of have to apply it to each and every one. Of course, you have to like pay attention to your board, pay attention to your augments, and have it affect all your decisions down the line in the game too. That's why it's made a bit trickier to like be really, really, really good at TFT now because you have to factor in a lot more randomness and kind of balance everything out. But Hopefully you all enjoyed this video. If you did learn something, I would appreciate it if you shared this video with a friend or hit the like button down below, either or, preferably both. But that's going to be it from me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.